Hey everybody, it's Nick for today's tutorial. Got a variation on the earlier tutorial that was using image recognition to recognize a utility pole. In this example, we're using image recognition to recognize a horizontal cylinder, and we're going to use it to place some toilet paper on an empty toilet paper roll. Again, this is an idea coming from one of my students in my studio. We have a roll of empty toilet paper with a image recognition code. It's not quite a QR code, and I printed it out at 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters. And you hold the camera up to it, and you again, like any other example, you really got to get it in frame and almost in center frame. At least with my phone, it's just not smart enough or that fast to detect it. It takes a couple of seconds. So we get close, and there it is, and then it's on there. And I've actually done a little bit of like occlusion, and it's not, I could have done a little bit better job aligning it, but you can see there's actually a cutout there, and I'll show you that. So for this particular kind of toilet paper holder, I've kind of modeled the cylinder, and that kind of helps with the effect a little bit. And again, it's not like quite great, but it does the job in places. And so that's what we're looking at right now. So I got this toilet paper roll that my student modeled, and the magic here, whatever the secret sauce, is that when you get it, you've actually got to adjust the pivot. And I've shown this in different examples. It's really important to align the pivot so that when you import it into Unity in the code, that it aligns properly. The coordinate system for objects in Studio Max by default is to have the Z axis up and the X and the Y axis represent the kind of ground plane. I think because Unity does a lot of 2D sprite work, sometimes they consider the X and the Z to be the front and the Y to be the like depth. And so what they have is what's called a Y up system. And what that means though is that when you're scanning this code, you're going to consider this the ground plane with the Y coming out as up. Okay, and so you've got to change the natural pivot of an object. So if that's what it wants to be, you've actually got to change it so that the green is actually coming out. Take a look at that. And that's in the local coordinate system. That's the important thing too, is like the system that's local to the object. If you look in Unity, you can see, right, the Y is up. The X and the Z are considered the ground plane, or the Z is considered depth. Okay. And so that's what you got to know. And in this case, what I've done with the um, system is I consider the empty roll and the front of the empty roll that's at a slight angle to where I'm capturing it with the camera. Right, it's not dead on because I'm looking at it from above. I'm thinking of that as the spawn point, and that's centered on the empty uh, uh, tube. And so that's how I've aligned my toilet paper roll, and that's how I've aligned my target. You can mess with it, by rotating it, and this just happened to work for me in this instance. But that's the principle of it. Then the other thing I did was I just made a material. These are all grouped together. I also find it helps to group things in order to align the pivot, because otherwise you have to like align the separate objects, and it just doesn't work that well. So I made them a group after I gave a different color material to the handle that's in there. I just made a blue material, and I suppose I could call this something better, like occlude or something, and this could just be like paper. We'll talk about texturing a bit later, but that's the general idea. I want to have two different materials so that when I go in to change the materials in Unity, it's very clear what those two things are. So there's, just get rid of that example. Let's go back though. Let's assume that you got this and you had it as just a model. How would you get that pivot, rotated? So click on the object. It's grouped together again. If you don't want to group stuff, just select everything, go to group, and make it a group. Go to the hierarchy tab up here, and then I'm going to go reset the pivot. Effect pivot, just reset. Align to world. Center to object. I don't know. Oops. Let's call this like where the pivot would actually come in, right? It's like roughly kind of the center of all the geometry is upright. What you want to do is go to effect pivot, And the first thing I would do is right click on the rotate, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate that pivot so that the Y is pointing out. So what I would do is pretty much go like a 90 degree that faces out, and then I would actually rotate these so that the blue is kind of the depth. And so like in that case, you want kind of a 180. So 90 in the X, negative 180 or 180 in the Z. It's going to give you your kind of base thing. And then if you go in the other views, you can kind of manipulate using the gimbals or using the gizmo transform, kind of where that is. And that looks pretty good right there. So if you look at where that is compared to our example. And then the last thing I did was I just kind of rotated it like slightly, and you can use your best judgment, depending on your application. I think I actually had it maybe at like 65 degrees or something like that. If you compile it and put it in, and it doesn't look right, you can kind of keep experimenting with it. But that also kind of takes a long time, so try not to. Yeah. So there you go. Local coordinate, and that's more or less where that's going to spawn in. That's what the computer is going to consider. Unity is going to consider 0 when that spawns in, is that point. So it's the face of the tube, roughly centered, a little bit angled, and that's gonna give us the effect that we've got in this kind of short demonstration here. There you go. So yeah, and I think I got the rotation off a little bit, but you can experiment with that. So in the file that I've got it set up like similar to the other file in the sense that I'm ready for image recognition. And it's key when you do image recognition that you've got the correct packages. You go to Package Manager, make sure that your AR Foundation version, give it load here. Your AR Foundation is Preview 6, so you go CL versions and then just go to 2.2 Preview 6. 2.2, okay. Don't upgrade it to the latest one. Don't use any of the versions that are in the 1 series because 2.2, the 2 series has the computer vision stuff you need. You're going to update AR Foundation, AR Subsystems, AR Core XR, and AR Kit XR to Preview 6 2.2.0. Okay. If you change the version, I can't guarantee you it's going to work. I've had trouble with 3 compiling correctly, so don't, basically. I've gone ahead and put in my my geometry from Studio Max, just imported the FBX. I've gone over that in other videos before. The key with this is that you go in and the object that represents the bar, you're gonna take the material that comes out of it and just change the mapping. So the typical material would be something like this, where it just says standard. You're gonna click on standard and go AR occlude, or actually just go occlusion. There you go, and click on that. And now you're gonna make basically a transparent material that's gonna hide geometry, and then drag that into the and then click apply. There you go. So now it's hiding that. That's it. So that's all it is. Just take that, whatever that probably need to name your objects better. I do, and then apply that material. And then the way that this works, like I said, I've gone over in some other videos before, is under AR Session Origin, you're going to add an AR Tracked Image Manager script and the Image Recognition Controller script. And these are already like in the file. You don't have to do anything with it. The AR Reference Image Library is this object here. And the way you get that, if you don't have one, is you go to Create, just right click, go Create, and then go to XR, and then go to Reference Image Library. Once you've got that, your reference image is the target that you found. And you can find these online. You can make your own whenever you make any size you want. And you drag that into this little thumbnail here. Give it a name, and then check specify size, and then put in the size of the actual target. In this case, it's 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters, which is 0.03 meters square. And then the last thing that you look at is this image recognition script. You don't need to do anything with this. You have to have it, but there's nothing you need to change. And so I'll just basically give you that in the file, and that's it. So those things, get tied into the origin. So you would drag the controller, drag in the reference script. Sorry, the reference script goes in the AR tracked image manager. It goes up here. And then the last thing you do is your prefab. Well, your prefab object that you're going to spawn is your TP. Okay. You compile that to your phone, you will get what I'm showing you in this video. Okay, so that's a way to get a horizontal track. It should go without saying, but I'm going to say right now, that all of this has been modeled to scale in meters in Studio Max. If you've not got it in meters, you go into customize, unit setup, changes to meters. The way you'd want to scale this to avoid messing up any animations or textures or whatever is to go to the utilities panel, go to more, and you want to go to rescale world units. And then basically you go to rescale and you type in what the scene factor is. A lot of times, like if you had something that was modeled in, for example, uh, 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 inches or something like that, the scale factor would be something like 8%. So, 0.08. Sorry, yeah, 0.08. You'd have to do the math for that, but that's a way to actually quickly change things. If you just scale things, it's not quite going to work right. Like if I went in and I actually went in and changed the scale of it, it actually isn't going to break a lot of the stuff that we had. So rescaling world units is better than any other option you've got if you were modeling it in imperial units and then you wanted to change the units to meters. All that this is going to do is simply change the units. It does not rescale things. So you got to be careful about that. Okay. So anyway, that is a quick, kind of demo of how to get something to recognize a horizontal object, a horizontal cylinder, mind you, using the image recognition scripts. And we'll look for some later tutorials about maybe trying to transfer some textures or animations with that. But that should get you going. Okay. I will talk to y'all later.